Hi, it's Ken here from LiveLink Training. In this tutorial we're going to create a layered composite image made from images, textures and effects, and we're going to finish up with something like this. You can see the layers panel here. We're going to go through it one layer at a time and build it up to the finished product. Okay, let's make a start. Step 1. We're going to create a new document. Basically just an empty piece of paper that we can build the rest of the things on top of. So I'm going to go to File and New, and then the new document dialog I'm going to put a width of 3000 and a height of 3000, so we'll end up with a square format, which is what I want to work with. Resolution we'll leave at 300 pixels per inch, RGB colour and 8-bit, everything else we'll leave the same, and we'll click Create, and that'll bring us up with the foundation of this document, which is the bottom layer or the background layer. Step 2, we want to add an empty layer, and we can do that by going down to the bottom of the layers panel here and clicking on this little doohickey next door to the trash can, and that puts us a new layer on here. Now I'm going to rename this to purple, and the reason for this is you'll see in a minute. And now your layers interface should look like this, that we've basically got as background layer and we've got a layer called purple. Okay, step 3, we need to fill this empty layer with a purple colour. Okay, so I'm going to do that by first going to my foreground colour swatch, which is here in the toolbox, and I'm going to click on it, and then I need to define what colour I want. And what I've gone for this one, it doesn't really matter, but I'll go for the hue, saturation and brightness. I'll put 278 in the hue, and I'll have 90 in the saturation, and I'll have 100 in the brightness, and then I'll click OK. And now you can see my foreground colour swatch has gone to my purpley colour. And now what I need to do is to fill my purple layer with purple. And I'm going to do that from the Fill dialog. So I'm going to go to the Edit menu and down to Fill. And then in the Fill dialog, in the Contents area, I'm going to select Foreground Colour, because that's what my foreground colour is. So now I'm going to fill it with whatever colour is there, which is purple. And then when I click OK, ba-ba-boom, I get it filled with purple. And that's pretty cool. Now this purple colour is a little bit on the hot side, so I'm going to temper it a little bit by reducing the opacity, and I'm going to reduce that opacity down to about 60%. I'm going to do that with a keyboard shortcut. I'm just going to press the 6 on the keyboard, and that's going to drop it down to 60%. Now, so long as you've got any selection tool active, you can use that shortcut. So if I want 30%, I just press the 3. If I want 25%, I just press 25. And you can see the opacity changing. But I'm going to go back up for 60%, and I think that looks about right. Now, on to step 4. And I want to add a texture. Now I've got a texture up here. I've got Tulip 1, I've got texture, and I've got Tulip 2. I'm going to click on texture to bring it to the front. And then I'm going to make sure I've got my move tool, and then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it up till the untitled one purple comes to the front, and then I'm going to drag it back and let go. Now it's actually quite a big texture, this. If I control and minus a couple of times, you'll see that purple line come, and if I enter transform, you'll see that it's quite a bit bigger. So I'm just going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to transform it so it just fits, and there's no sneaky little edges. There we go, that looks a bit better. Okay, and then Control and plus just to zoom it back out again. That's looking cool, but the problem is that I can't see through it. So what I'm going to do to bring a little bit of that purple colour through from underneath is I'm just going to drop the opacity and drop it to about 60%, something like that, and I think that's looking fine. I think that's cooking with gas. Step 5, I need to create a centre square. I want this to look like it's a little bit of a picture frame. And I'm going to do that with the texture layer. So I'm going to duplicate that with Control and J. And at the minute I'm just going to put the opacity back up again, and then I'm going to go into transform. Control and T to transform. Now if I hold the modifier key down, if I hold the Alt key down and I drag on one of these corners, it'll drag it in around from all sides equally this rotation point in the middle here. So if I just click and drag on that, I can drag it in till I get it about, yeah, something like about an inch off, something like that, all the way around. And then I can click the tick to accept it. And again, I'm going to change the opacity back to about 60% so I can see through it a little bit, because I want it to have a nice ethereal sort of misty sort of look to it. Okay, next is step 6. And for this I'm going to bring in one of the tulip images. And this is Tulip 1. I'm just going to click on that. You can see there it is. And I'm going to take that with the move tool and drop it into my Untitled 1 composition. So click and drag, just pause until that composition comes to the front, and then bring it out and drag it. And now it needs transforming. I want to make it the same shape as that so it fits. So I'll just put it into that corner, and then Control and T, transform, and then I'm just going to drag it in until it just covers that, something like that, and then double click, or you can click the tick, and that's it. That's that in position. Now I don't really want all this brown beigey background, because it'll make a mess of trying to blend things. So I'm going to get rid of it. So I need to make a selection. So I'm going to go and I'm going to use my Magic Wand tool, because this is a pretty good tool, because this is pretty even toned, all this background. So my Magic Wand selects by tone, so it should make a pretty good job of it. I'm going to have it in add to selection mode, which is this one. 3x3 average for my sample size, that's fine. Tolerance of 20, that's pretty good. I'll leave my anti-alias and my contiguous ticked, and I don't want sample or layers ticked. And then I'm just going to click somewhere in the brown. So if I click there, that's not done a bad job. And then I've got this bit here, because I've got contiguous ticked, it wouldn't cross this boundary, so I need to click in there. Again, not done a bad job, and click in there. And that's got all that lot selected for me. Now what I want to do is create a hide all mask. Now I could go down to the bottom of the layers panel and just click on the mask, but that would bring up the wrong type of mask. What I want is a hide all mask, which is a black one. And if I hold the Alt key down and then click on the mask icon, it puts the mask the right way around for me. And there you can see we've got some lovely definition in this picture, and we've got the things going off in the background as well. Now just to finish this off, I want this to be in the background. This isn't the image that I'm wanting to focus on, but I'd just like it there to give a little bit of context. So I'm going to change the opacity, and you can do that if we just click this little down arrow here and then drag this slider. This is just another way of changing the opacity, and I'll bring it right down to something like 9, 10, 11%, something like that. So it's there in the background, a little bit in the background where I can see it. Now I can see at the bottom here I've got a little bit of an issue. I need to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to Control and T and then just drag that up a little bit so it fits. And then let's just have a look. I'll click the tick again. Yeah, that looks better. That looks fine. Right, step 7. I want to bring in the other tulip image. So I've got my Tulip 2. And I'm going to get the move tool, and I'm going to drag that and bring it into my composition. Now again, it's a bit big, so I just want to make it fit. So I'm going to use transform, Control and T, and then just drag it till it seems to fit. And I'll stick it in the middle somewhere like that, because I'm going to take all that background out anyway. I'll just move it up a little bit so it's inside. Hopefully I'll not have any edges. Right, there we go. Now again, all this beige needs to go. So again, I'm going to use my Magic Wand tool. I'll leave everything the same as it was before, and I'll just click. And you can see that there is a little bit of a discrepancy in the colour here. So basically me 20 on the tolerance only reached this amount of the pixels. So I'm going to click again because I'm in add to selection, so we're okay. And I'm going to click again down at the bottom, and that does a pretty good job of making the selection for me. And then again, I'm going to put a black mask on. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, and I'm going to click on my mask icon. And there we go. That doesn't look bad. Okay, we've got a little bit of a discrepancy here, but the good thing is if I've got my layer selected and I've got my move tool selected, then I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard just to nudge it down or nudge it up or nudge it left or nudge it right. So I can nudge it up or nudge it down 1 pixel at a time. I think that looks pretty cool. Yeah, and I'm going to reduce the opacity on this again, let's say about 60%, because I want to give it like an ethereal feel. And I think that looks fine. So at this point, this is what your layers panel should look like, and this is what your image should look like if you're following along with me. Okay, on to step 8. What I want to do is create a soft focus effect. So I'm going to duplicate this Tulip tool layer here. I'm going to do Control and J or Command and J if you're on a Mac. And now I don't want to work with a mask, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this mask, and what that'll do is the mask will disappear and I'll be left just with the transparency. So I'll be working on a pixel layer. So I'm going to click on the mask and I'm going to right click and I'm going to select Apply Layer Mask. And there we go, that's it gone. Now I'm going to convert it to a smart object because I want to apply a couple of filters to it, but I want it to be reversible so I can go back in and make some changes if I don't get it right the first time. So I'm going to right click and convert to smart object. There we go, and we can tell it's a smart object because of this little doohickey thing in the corner here. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Gaussian blur. So I'm going to go to the filter menu and down to blur and down to Gaussian blur. I'm going to look about 25 pixels, I think is about right for this one, and it'll just give it just a little bit of a soft focus effect there like that, and I'm liking that. You can have a look at what it looks like if you just click that minus little spyglass there just to zoom out, and this is all we're looking at. We're just looking at a little bit of a blurry soft focus effect, and then I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to add an effect from the filter gallery. So I'm going to go to filter and filter gallery. That's going to bring up the whole filter gallery. And then in the sketch area, which is this one, I'm just going to select waterpaper, which will give it a little bit of a waterpaper effect, like a painting effect. I'll set the fiber length to about 15 and the brightness, we'll say about 81, and the contrast to about 80. And then I'll click OK. And there we go, we've got like a little bit of a soft focus effect going on there, and I'm liking that. And I might just drop the opacity just a little bit, just something like that. Okay. Step 9, I think I want to add another texture layer. I want to make this effect just a little bit more textury. So I'm going to click on layer 1, which is my texture layer. I'm going to duplicate it, Control and J, or Command and J if you're on a Mac, and then I'm going to drag it to the top of the stack. And just wait till you see them 2 blue lines at the top, and then let it go, and there it is right at the top of the stack. I'll transform it again. So I'm going to do Control and T. First I'm going to rotate it just to give me a little bit of a different, because rather than having the same texture on top. So I'm going to right click and do rotate 90 degrees clockwise. And then again I'm going to hold the Alt key down and I'm going to drag it in just so it covers that center plate, that center square, something like that. And then double click or click the tick to accept it. And now I'd just like to reduce the opacity a little bit. So a little bit more, just so it's giving me a little bit more texture. Probably down, I don't know, yeah, maybe 30%, something like that. And now I'd just like as a focal point, just to put a mask on and bring this tulip head through. So I'm going to put on a mask down to the washing machine icon at the bottom. I've got black as my foreground colour, that's fine. Got my paintbrush, a nice soft round paintbrush, and then I'm just going to click a few times just to bring a little bit of that detail back through. Yeah, that's what I want. Step 10, I'd like to add a little bit of pop to the image. So I'm going to do that with a brightness contrast adjustment layer. So I'm going to down to the bottom of the layers panel, click on the adjustment layer icon, and then I'm going to select brightness and contrast. And now I'm going to take the brightness down to about -15, and I'll push the contrast up to about 40. You see, that just gives it a little bit of pop. I'll just turn that on and off for you. It's only subtle but significant. But yes, I'm happy with that. That's what I want to do. Now, step 11, I want to add a stroke and a drop shadow on this inner square, just to give it a little bit of separation. Now, you might find that quite often when you're using blend modes, if you try and hang a stroke or anything, you'll get some pretty weird results because of the blend mode. So what I'm going to do is create an empty layer and create a neutral fill layer at the top of the stack, and then I can put on my stroke and effects without any problem. So let's go and create an empty layer at the top of the stack. And then what I need to do is to bring back the selection of this square. So I'm going to hold the Control key down, or the Command key on a Mac, and I'm going to click on the layer that's gone. You'll see that now I've got a little hand icon with a selection on. And if I click on the actual layer itself, not the mask, but the layer itself, it will bring back this selection. Now this selection goes all the way through the stack. So I now click back on the top layer, so that selection is now live. And what I'm going to do is fill this with 50% grey. So I'm going to go to my edit menu and down to fill, and instead of foreground colour in the contents, I'm going to change that to 50% grey, and then click OK. And it's gone grey, it's done what I said, so I don't need the selection anymore. So I'm going to deselect that selection, and now I've got a blend mode that I can choose that will make that invisible. So it makes all those pixels invisible. And now I can quite happily put my effects on here. So I'm going to go down to my FX icon and go for my blending options. And it opens up this quite large dialogues, but I can now put my stroke on. So I'm going to double click to take me to the stroke. I'll say, yeah, something about 4 pixels inside with the position blend mode normal, opacity 100% and my colour of white. And while I've got this dialog open, I can go down to my drop shadow, double click, and here I've got my drop shadow area. And that don't look bad. I think all I'd adjust on that is just pull the angle round a little bit just to make it look as though the shadow's coming this way or the sun is shining this way. And then I click OK. Now step 12, this is an optional one, but I'm going to add a title and a watermark. So first I'm going to select my type tool, and I'm going to pick a nice font. Now one of my favourite fonts is called Hearthstone. You probably won't have this, but it is downloadable from the internet. And I'm just going to click, oh no, first I'm going to choose my foreground colour and make it black. So I'm just going to click this little icon here, or I can press the D key on the keyboard. And then I'm going to click right there and I'm going to type tulip. Move it into position somewhere in the middle. There we go. And then I'll add my watermark. Now for my watermark, I just need an empty layer. So I'm going to click to create a new empty layer at the top of the stack. And then I've got my watermark as a brush to make it easy. So I'm just going to click. And if we look here, I've got there's two watermarks that I use. And this one is the one that I've got at the moment, which is this one. So I'm then going to, I think it might look better with white actually, if we do it there. So I'm going to swap round the foreground and the background colours, and I can do that by clicking this little bendy arrow here or pressing the X key, and that toggles. So now I've got my foreground colour of white, and I can click to put my watermark on. Well, that's it. How to create an arty image of a tulip using layers, textures and blend modes. If you enjoy the tutorial, please give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment under the video. I'd love to hear from you. And please click that subscribe button at the end of the video. That would be of great help to me in reaching more learners with the YouTube algorithm and expand my Photoshop learning community. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.